All right, let's just jump right in. When we think about AI in the workplace, our minds usually go to robots on a factory floor, right? Or maybe chatbots handling customer service. But what if I told you that the next big step for AI isn't the mailroom, but the boardroom? Yeah, we're talking about algorithms making top-level executive decisions. And this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. It's happening right now, and we're about to break it all down.
So let's just put the big question on the table right away. Could your next boss literally be an algorithm? It sounds kind of crazy, maybe even a little creepy. But the answer might actually surprise you, because for a growing number of people, it's already a reality. That's right. This idea of an AI executive, it's not some far-off futuristic concept. Companies actually started putting algorithms into high-level corporate jobs more than a decade ago. It's been a quiet revolution, but it's been happening.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It kicked off way back in 2014, when a venture capital fund in Hong Kong put an AI named Vital on its board of directors. Then just 2 years after that, a public company made an AI called Alicia T a top manager. And then fast forward to just last year, and bam, a humanoid robot named Mika is appointed CEO. Are you seeing the pattern here? This isn't just a slow trickle. It's speeding up and fast.
And here's the wild part. Back in 2015, you had the experts at the World Economic Forum making this bold prediction, right? They said we'd probably see the first AI on a corporate board by 2026. Well, as we just saw with Vital, we blew past that prediction by 12 years. The takeaway is pretty clear. The future that experts were just guessing about a few years ago, we're already living in it.
So how does this all actually work? I mean, when we hear robot boss, we might picture Mika, the humanoid CEO, sitting at the head of a table. But most of the time, it's not about a physical robot in a chair. It's about these massive invisible data systems that are working behind the scenes.
Generally, companies are taking one of two paths. On one hand, you have the really ambitious approach, building these huge digital command centers that pull in data from every single corner of the company to get this one unified view of everything. And on the other hand, you've got a more focused approach, using AI to automate specific, high-level jobs, like analyzing investment risks or even helping pick which humans should be on the board.
Okay, so what does one of these digital command centers look like in the real world? Let's take a closer look at a really powerful example. It's called the Panorama System, and it's used by the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, or ADNOC.
So try to picture this. Panorama is basically the company's central nervous system. It's managing an organization with over $60 billion in turnover. It pulls in real-time data from more than a dozen different companies under its umbrella. It uses digital twins. These are basically virtual copies of its real-world oil rigs and refineries to monitor everything and predict problems. It even uses blockchain to keep all that information secure. And the goal is that by 2030, this system will create a direct, seamless line of information from an oil field all the way to an investor's portfolio. It is absolutely staggering technology.
Okay, but that brings up a huge question, doesn't it? When you hand over that much power to an algorithm, when it's making calls that affect thousands of people and billions of dollars, how do you keep it in check? How can you possibly be sure that its decisions are fair, that they're unbiased, and that we can even understand them?
And that leads us straight into one of the biggest headaches in the entire field of AI. It's called the black box problem. It's what happens when an AI gives you an answer, maybe even a brilliant one, but we have absolutely no clue how it got there. The reasoning is hidden inside a box we can't open.
And here's where that black box gets really dangerous. It can hide something called algorithmic bias. Now, this is when an AI system starts making prejudiced decisions, not because it's evil or has some kind of malicious intent, but simply because the data it learned from was already full of human biases.
So how does this happen? Well, bias can sneak in at pretty much every stage. First, the data you feed the AI might reflect decades of societal prejudice. Second, as the AI trains on that data, it doesn't just learn those biases, it can actually make them worse, amplifying them. And finally, the human programmers themselves, without even realizing it, can code their own unconscious biases right into the system's logic.
So how in the world do you fight a problem you can't even see? Well, regulators are starting to step in. The European Union, for example, has put forward this really radical idea called a right to an explanation. The concept is simple, but it's powerful. If an algorithm turns you down for a loan or rejects your job application, you have a legal right to know why. It's a direct attempt to use the force of law to pry open that black box.
But what if new laws aren't the only way?
What if, instead of just demanding an explanation after the fact, we could teach the AI the rules of the game from the very beginning? This is the core idea behind a new approach, creating a dedicated rulebook just for the AI.
So here's the thinking. You basically create two different sets of company policies. You have one for the humans, the one we're used to, written in normal language and based on abstract ideas like ethics and principles, and then you create a second, parallel policy just for the AI. This one's written in code, and it's based on hard, objective, measurable data. It essentially builds clear guardrails right into the AI's operating system.
This approach lets you take a fuzzy human concept, like fair treatment, and translate it into specific, concrete instructions that an AI can actually understand and follow. So you can program in explicit rules around things like informed consent, or non-discrimination, or ensuring that risks are distributed fairly across different groups. You're not just hoping the AI acts fairly, you're hard-coding fairness into its decision-making process.
Now, figuring out how to control these AI bosses is incredibly important, because if we zoom out and look at where all of this technology is heading, it leads to a much bigger, almost philosophical question. I mean, when AI isn't just doing tasks, but is actually managing, learning, and improving itself at a corporate level, where does that road end? And that's where we have to start talking about the singularity.
The technological singularity. It's this hypothetical moment when machine intelligence hits a point of no return. It starts a runaway feedback loop where each generation of AI gets smarter and smarter, and it starts designing its own, even more intelligent successor. The result is an explosion of intelligence that we humans can no longer predict or control.
Now let's bring that huge idea back down to the boardroom. Think about a company with a system like Panorama. It becomes more efficient, so it makes more money. It then reinvests that money into making its AI management system even smarter. That smarter system makes the company even more money. You see where this is going? It creates its own feedback loop. You could end up with a kind of corporate singularity, where a handful of AI-powered companies achieve this unstoppable, runaway dominance in the market.
And this is where the conversation gets really complicated. It moves beyond just business and profit and into deep questions of ethics and rights. When the robot Sophia was famously granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, it sparked this incredibly profound question. It forces us to stop and really think about what words like intelligence, rights, and even personhood actually mean in an age where the things we create are starting to take a seat at the head of the table. The rules we write now won't just shape the future of business, they'll shape the future of what it even means to be human.